running through all the percentages of this, that and the other, basically there are maxima and minima that you can have of certain grapes, notably maximum 50% of Carignan, and basically Corbières has to be more than one variety. So you can never have it, it's not the Burgundian model per se, where you have just a single variety. It has to be more than one. Whether that is Carignan with a bit of Syrah, or Syrah with a bit of Grenache, or whatever. I mean, there are a number of possibilities. Cinsault is another variety that is allowed to be used in the Cahier des Charges. So it's always blended. Beyond that, the style of winemaking, the length, the duration of maturing is pretty open. I mean, it's true that there's a minimum time before you can release it onto the market, but it's, I don't know, a month after harvest or 2 months after harvest. So that's not particularly relevant. It's more relevant to the bulk market, for example, than to us. But generally, fermentation logistics will say that you're not likely to be able to successfully release stuff onto the market any quicker than that. So, yeah.
Do you foresee those rules changing? And if so, is there a push to have them changed? And what would the changes be?
Do I foresee them changing? Yeah, I do foresee them changing, actually. There is a push, although in certain sectors people wouldn't necessarily like to admit it. I think people are coming around. I know we're talking a lot about Carignan this morning, but I think it's important. People are coming around to the idea that the bad reputation that it has garnered from the past needs leaving, and it's instead of just changing variety, it's more important to reinterpret it. This is something that we're beginning to see more and more people thinking about, not only on the ground in terms of other vignerons, other wine growers, but in terms of the syndicat, in terms of the actual administrative organisations. I think are being not necessarily being forced to step back, but having enough examples presented to them which create an atmosphere where they're saying, hang on, maybe let's look at this again. Which comes back to what I said to start off with. So I think the net result of that will be that the rules change. Notably, the 50% on Carignan, which for me is pretty much an aberration. There's no reason why it shouldn't be what's known as a majority varietal, like Syrah, like Grenache, like Mourvedre. So anything up to effectively 99%. So that I think would probably make the most fundamental difference in taking the appellation to the next step. And the talk about Carignan is fine, but I think what's important to note is that it's a variety that is very well adapted to the region, and I think that's important because it means that it opens a lot of doors in terms of what you can do with it, whilst having a solid base in the vineyard. It'll give you something consistent year on year, so it's not like you'll be having one good year in 3 or one good year in 5, which can be the case, for example, with Mourvedre. It's not something that suffers physiologically, notably the case of Syrah in the south, well, not just in the south, but particularly in the south. And so you're starting from a more solid base. Above and beyond that, I think, particularly these days, it's important for regions to have an identity, almost like a catchword, something that people can latch onto, that they can relate to that place as being distinct from other places. And this variety is not a variety that, whilst it's used, for example, it's used in the Roussanne, so south of us, it's used in Catalonia, it's used in the Rhone Valley as well. It's not the key variety, and so I think that's important for us as producers in the area to set ourselves apart, and that strikes me as a good vehicle for doing so. Beware what you create. Its arms are long.